Welcome to the C45 Association's official YouTube channel. The following presentation is brought to you with support from Sigma Analytical Services with the C45 Association. Sigma Analytical is the only cannabis lab with cross-continental operations in the world and the first cannabis-focused GMP certified lab in Canada. Our service goes beyond a full panel of testing and also covers stability studies, cleaning validation, formulation and product development support, and more. We have been a front runner in testing Cannabis 2.0 products and have validated methods for vape cartridges and a variety of edibles, topicals, and beverages. Sigma is also Shoppers Drug Mart's partner in medical cannabis by Shoppers and Ecolab's exclusive partner in Canada and South America to run cleaning validation studies for cannabis processors and producers. Our short and dependable turnaround times, in addition to accurate and reliable results and outstanding client support, has made Sigma the preferred lab for many LPs. Sigma also offers support on consulting projects for the producers and labs in Canada, Colombia, the US, and beyond. From method development, validation, and transfer, to support for designing, setting up, and running in-house or independent cannabis labs. For any questions or to start a discussion on how we can assist you, please don't hesitate to contact us. We hope you enjoy the following presentation, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more quality content.
Hi everyone, welcome to HempFest. We're going to be talking today through the points of commercializing cannabis. I'll let the rest of the team introduce themselves, but today I'm Leif Unseth. I'm with the Canadian Cannabis Exchange. Our role in the market is to connect buyers and sellers and help with the full commercial process and standard way of transacting, as well as issue month-end report data on where the industry is at, where prices are headed, and what's happening on products in general.
Perfect. I can go next. My name is Keenan Pascal. I'm the CEO of Token Naturals. We're just actually today got our license, so we're a licensed producer in the federal space and here in Edmonton, Alberta. So we focus on manufacturing and white labeling of products. And right now we have a liquid filling focus, so topicals, pens, oils, and drink additives is where our industry experience comes from. And before that, we were in the cocktail space. We owned the bitters company, so it's the largest bitters company in Alberta and exported across Canada and Japan. And then we also own 7 retail stores.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Anuraga. I work with mainly micros and startups as I provide some QAP services or any other kind of quality and regulatory aspects tailor-made for that particular site.
And my name's Brandon Wright. I've been in the space about 5 years on the legacy side, and then as an edibles producer on the license side as well, and taking another crack at the apple. We're currently building a processing co-op as well for co-packing and bringing brands to market.
Awesome. Well, appreciate the introductions, everyone. Just wanted to start off at the start of commercializing cannabis. And Brandon, your point was just to talk about what your plan is going in. Where are you going to make money and where are you going to fit in that supply chain? So just wanted to hear some comments on what groups should be looking at from that day one.
Yeah, and this was kind of one that is going to be different to every company or every person that's coming in with an idea. And it really depends on who you are, what you're bringing into it, and what kind of size you think you are at the outset. For example, are you coming in as a grower and you know what size your team needs to be to bring your products to market? Are you coming in with an idea and just a product that you're trying to find a route to get to market yourself? We know that in the last 5 years, it's been very, very difficult for legacy operators of products to get their stuff to market, and especially because there's a lot of hands in the way. So knowing who you are really as a company and what your real focus is going to be is really going to help you figure out what the walls that you're going to run into are going to be.
Yeah, and with that, I guess there's standard cultivation, standard processing, micros. Keenan's talking about being a bitters and drink additive company. So just understanding where you sit in the supply chain, how can groups go about understanding that, knowing who their suppliers are, knowing who their buyers are pre-license?
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where you have to kind of look for the people that are going to be in your lane with you. So, for example, if you're a flower grower and you want to be a micro flower grower, you should look up and down on either side of who the next people you need to talk to is going to be, depending on what your goals and your dreams are. Are you someone who just wants to grow great flower and watch it get into market, and it doesn't really matter to you who's the one selling it, or who's the one doing the branding, or which provinces it goes into? Then that's a much different story and approach than if you have a strong sense of wanting to build a cannabis brand out of really amazing products and have people understand and know it by name and recognize it and be really proud of that product being sold across Canada and recognized. Because there's very different paths there, and very different team sizes and a lot of different people that you have to speak to, and complexities of the journey. So knowing kind of where you want to start, where you want to get to, and what you ultimately want to be and do is going to help you trim down on the amount of time that you need to spend figuring out what those steps look like, I should say.
Yeah, fair enough. Keenan, since you just got your license, you would have gone through this very recently. How did you find your way through that supply chain and knowing where you fit and lining up all the groups you need to hit the ground running day one?
Yeah. To Brandon's point, he's like just nailed it on the head. It's really about having that focus and alignment of where you want to fit in once you start. So we put our application in like 2017, October, and we in the market still saw a lot of ups and downs, turmoil. The kind of the vertically integrated model was getting tested, and kind of there's poking holes in it. So we decided to sit on the sideline, and we didn't start building until 2019. And with that, we quickly focused our kind of business model to how do we get into the market through kind of the white labeling, the manufacturing focus. So we put a lot of our time and effort into like the engineering, the supply lines, the things like that would make our company unique and be able to, bring products to market by partnerships. And again, kind of speaking to Brandon's point of like finding those people who play in your space is like, hey, now we're talking to brands that don't want to build a full facility. They just want to bring their product to market, or, service pain points in the larger LPs where they're saying, hey, we need, mixing services, or do you guys have extra square footage for pre-rolls and things like that? And that's where we're starting to hit our stride and fit into the market.
Absolutely. So with that, does it come into pre-signing suppliers, pre-signing buyers, or just kind of knowing who those groups are day one? You mentioned these large LPs, drink mixing. Just getting a sense of, were you going out there and kind of terming up groups to get ready for that day one launch, or is it more of something that you think groups should feel their way through once they're operating?
Yeah, I think it's you definitely want to have an understanding of the market and like who your players are, who you talk to, where do you start? Like we've had LOIs in place with a bunch of different groups, and just being able to really tailor our packages to them. So they evolve. Like I don't think any LOI that we signed in 2019, 2020 was worth anything now, because it was like the market changed, their demands changed, everything just got flipped upside down. But now the ones that we're doing like, the last month, 2 months, they're quite focused on, here, this is what the facility looks like. This is our capacity. This is what kind of service we can do. So it's definitely get out early, because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to find that, that guy you talk to, he didn't get his financing in place, and it doesn't make sense to, kind of invest into his product line, or this company you didn't even hear about has this big project. Can you take it on? And like, those are the kind of things. The industries, first, I find it's very open. Like you can, like exactly like this, 4 people here, it's all spread out, and you can kind of call people and just be like, hey, can I pick your brain on this? And I find most people are pretty open to those kind of discussions. So take advantage of it. So it's a unique industry. It's brand new in terms of the legal market. So there's a lot of people are working together, kind of feeling their way through the dark.
I'd actually like to point out that Keenan just identified one of like the secret tricks of the early stage is that LOIs are everywhere, and they're generally a dime a dozen and hardly worth the paper they're written on. But what they are really good at is indicating to you if you're on the right path or not. If you're getting the LOIs in place that you need with people that you expect, or that they expect to be doing the work that you want them to do, then it generally means that there's some hope out there that this is a good sign, a good progress. If no one's even interested in an LOI, you're probably way off target for what the current market is looking for.
Yeah, fair enough. It changes week by week in this industry. And Rui, I know something you talked about is reliable partners, so less on the supplier side, but more on the companies that you'd be using every day, the labs, the shipping companies, the PPE suppliers. Just getting a sense of what that side of it looks like, both pre-license and when you're starting out licensing, and what a reliable lab or reliable shipper looks like to you.
So, of course, at the end of the day, the financial aspects come into play. But even before that, you want to have some sort of a consistency that you could rely on, whether it's, like you said, the PPE suppliers or your shipping companies. You want to be able to have that sort of a partnership with them, saying that, okay, this is my plan, and are you able to fill in what I'm exactly looking for? So, when you're looking for a lab, don't just look for a lab that is going to give you, say, very good THC levels or any potency levels. Look for someone who has had a good background in the industry, helping different kinds of clients, saying that you should be able to trust them on their results. Not just that they'll give you a good potency results. Now, if that's the case, then yes, everyone would give you a good result just to be your client. But if something happens out in the market, the results come out to be wrong, then you're dealing with a lot of other backlash, like maybe a recall that could affect your brand, as well as would be a huge financial burden.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess from our position. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brandon.
Sorry, if I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I was going to ask, like, do you have any tips for someone that's out there looking for a good first lab? Because I know something like, don't just pick someone with the highest THC results. Do you have any suggestions how someone might go about picking the one that they do want to pick? That's a good identifiers of a good lab.
First thing I'd say is trust your QA. Start involving QA right from the beginning, not just when you're about to release a product. Because QAs have had experience in dealing with different kinds of labs or different kinds of partners, and once they start looking at at their example results or what their validation studies have been, they'll be able to figure out whether they're doing it in the right way or just to impress you.
Yeah, and another thing to add to there is just referrals. Like, go through, just talk to other people in the industry, and you'll hear the ones to avoid, and you'll know who's. It's pretty quick. Just there's a limited number of labs, and people let you know who they've had experiences with.
I too like the grapevine strategy, but I'm glad that someone has the paper strategy.
Yeah, that's probably better.
Yeah, just a balance of both. On your point, you said involving QA from the start. We've talked a lot on commercial strategy, picking what you're going to do, how are you going to produce it, your experience. But what does that mean, involving QA from the start? Because I think that's usually a member on the team that gets built out later in the stage. So what does that look like to involve them early on, and what are the benefits there?
So for a cultivation side, yes, you end up involving QA at the end. That is either you're taking on QA as a consultant, going to help you on like an on and off basis, or if you're a standard cultivator or a standard processor, you already have someone in place. But for a processor, you already need someone as a QAP on file, so you have to go with them no matter what. So think of all the other aspects that go in, whether it's nutrients, whether it's any grow supplies. QA has a different way of confirming that particular grow supply is good for you, whether you're selecting live soil or cocoa or any kind of grow medium, for example. QA comes with a different perspective, saying what kind of contamination could be happening, or what kind of preventative measures should we be taking to make sure that our product is consistent all the way till the end, or there is no safety or quality concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. With that, you also had mentioned earlier involving QA and what fills the facility. And Brandon, this is your point too. What equipment are you putting in there? What makes good equipment? What's a trade-off on used equipment? So, for example, at the exchange, we've been helping clients fill on theirs, and we're realizing that someone wants to go away and run with the best and the highest priced pre-roll machine, for example, just because it's the highest cost. So around equipment, what does that selection process look like to you guys?
I think I'm happy to speak to this because we're in the process of acquiring a bunch of equipment right now, and my partner has it's basically what he does for companies before he was doing it for us. So uh, the the process has evolved a lot. The equipment has changed over the last 5 years. There are companies that are coming out with new stuff all the time. There's lots of legacy stuff that's been in the market now for years that's somewhat what you can call tried and true and tested, but is often the first or second iteration of that process. Um, the only advice I could give is get options. Don't make sure that if you only see one or two options for something out there, there's probably other options. There's probably more. And unless you think that the one or two that you've found has fit your solution perfectly, at that point, maybe you're just looking for an understanding is the price target of that equipment in the market. Um, the second big thing is making sure that that equipment is something that you really want to spend that capital cost on if you need it. If it's generally second stage or processing equipment, asking yourself if that's something that you need and want right out the gate and right out the door. That's a question that LPs have been asking themselves for 5 years now, and a lot of them didn't have the right answer, which is why we're seeing a huge cutback in the larger space because they all oversupplied that equipment, and now there's tons of it on the market in the used space. So yeah, there's definitely a big used market for equipment at the moment as well.
Yeah, no, on the equipment side, definitely look at the used equipment, and then tailoring it to your facility is critical, especially as you're in your early stages. So for us, like we built our facility, like we had one of our board members come from like Agrium. So he was looking at the cannabis industry when we started, and we had the original plan, like all the other LPs, of just building this, this full thing all at once. And he was like, that's stupid. Why don't you guys have a pilot lab? Like, where's your pilot lab? He builds $1 billion facilities all over the world. And he's like the VP in Africa and Egypt. And he's like, this doesn't make sense for you to do everything at once. So he really got us to cut back, make it lean, prove that we needed that room, and then prove we needed the equipment in the room. So for us, as we built out our equipment and our flows, it was a matter of, okay, who's the actual product and who's the actual end consumer that's going to be using this piece of equipment. And we don't pull the trigger on the equipment purchase until that agreement's signed, or we know, hey, we're for sure using this, because there's so much stuff on the used market right now. And then also look, there's an amazing amount of engineering, like just smart local engineering in Canada. Like there's obviously the attraction of going overseas and getting it for cheaper, but like for us, like we just bought a capper from a local Edmonton company, gave them the bottles, like here's the compliant packages, here's what we need. And it was, about the same price as ordering it from brand new from the big companies everyone's going off of. And they've come to our facility and be like, hey, let me make sure it's installed right. And do you guys want to come see how we adjust this? And like, it's an amazing process when you kind of look in your local backyard for smart people, because the science is all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something we're seeing is just so much used equipment. People who thought they were going to grow 12 grow rooms, they're growing 6. Now they have extra debutters, lights in boxes. It's really about phasing it out. Is that demand there, and going from there? And part of that's
funny. It's
yeah. Go ahead, Brandon.
Sorry, I was going to say it's definitely a buyer's market on the equipment side of things.
Yeah, for sure. That also kind of segues into a lot of groups who are copying other group strategies. They came in and said, okay, well, there's a massive hemp extractor to distillate on the East Coast. Maybe I should do that on the West Coast. There's a lot of that. Well, if it's working for them, it's going to work for me. But we've seen the industry, A, move way too quickly. B, not every facility and team is built equally. So kind of an obvious one not to imitate someone else's strategy. But just want to get your guys' thoughts on being unique, because a lot of people just don't have enough market data in this industry to make those finite choices now. So what does it mean to say, this is what I'm selling to the consumer, this is how I'm going to get there? Still having the flexibility, but not just picking the proven path because it'll give you the return on capital that you need.
I think Keenan kind of hit the nail on the head when he said prove your market type. Again, this really depends on what type of operation you're going to be running, whether and what products you want to be launching, because the market has a lot more experience with certain type of products than others. But the big one that he identified, and that the way I like to sum it up is, you're either very rich and you can afford to make a lot of mistakes, or you are picking something that's unique and trying to test that first, one step at a time, or maybe one or two or three steps at a time. But there's a lot of companies out there that will have submitted 12 to 24 different SKUs to to the provinces, and maybe only had a couple, if that, accepted. And you got to be prepared for that. You got to be prepared. Can your operational overhead, can you afford to burn cash while you wait for the next season, or while you wait for the next call in of whichever provinces you're trying to get listed with? And of course, each one's have different requirements. Are you even the one who is trying to do the listing and the sell through, or are you just someone who's trying to backfill that grow for someone else and just needs to, and knowing how, like, what your objective is to just do that for them and make that process the easiest?
Absolutely. And Ruga, I don't know if you had any comments on that, because you work with so many different companies at the same time. Each one's very unique, and kind of your comments on how each of them chose their own path, or your observations between the companies that you work with.
Definitely. I agree with all the points that have been discussed so far. It's like, yes, for one, it might have worked, or maybe in the legacy world, it could have worked because maybe you were operating at a different scale or a different kind of a standard. But once you're trying to grow it at such a bigger scale, or at a different kind of a outlook, so you have to look at something that be consistently same, not so different from each batch to batch. Yes, that could be the definition of craft in the legacy world, but once it comes to the legal side, you have to have a proof of concept. But the industry is so small and so young that there haven't been many proven concepts other than that was brought over from either a different country or a different kind of background. So that's something you have to be really careful about when selecting something totally new.
Yeah, like I can kind of give like a real world example of that with us learning things the hard way. And yeah, like going from making 100 units to making 10,000 units is 10 day. Like it's not timesing it by 10. So for us, like this is an example with the bitters company, but when we started, it was like hand labeled, hand crafted, like I was cranking it with my hands, and then we started having to up our scale, and so we had this like torque capper. So it was like it was hand one, you put it on and you squeeze it, and we're pumping through, and we're like, oh, this is amazing. But what we didn't learn is, like, because we didn't set it properly, it was making a little tear in all the pipettes. And when we scaled that up, we did a whole batch that was a big waste because we didn't understand how to go from 100 to 10,000, and we just jumped into it. Where if we would have okay, let's slowly learn that. So when we're talking with clients now, it's like, hey, you've done this in the legacy market, you cap filled it, but is that cap going to fit? And is this machine? Have you tried doing it over and over again in small batches and then scaling it up? So a lot of people that have come to us and been like, oh yeah, we've made this for years, and we're like, okay, that's great. Let's work together to figure out how to do that on a larger scale. Because when AGLC or OCS is ordering from you, they don't want you to make it once and then make something completely different the second time. Or if there's a big gap between your orders, they expect you to be able to fill it every time they call you. So you want to be able to have that ready before you start, approaching the market on a larger scale.
I'd be happy to add as a very real world example as well on to that. What the provinces are looking for today are generally unique products, or for you to compete better on existing ones, which is arguably harder. If by the time you're looking to launch your products into the market or have someone launch them for you, that is still the case, then, and you have a unique product, then congrats. You're definitely probably going to get at least a test in somewhere. There are 13 markets in Canada, and you are probably going to participate in one of them because the rollout of unique stuff is going fairly slowly. We're seeing every season new products coming to market, new topicals, new seeds, new et cetera. But there is still a lot of room on the shelves for you, that wonderful bouquet of unique products that we used to have in the legacy market, and arguably still do, and arguably are trying to transfer over. So it's good to know that if you think what you have is something totally unique, you're probably going to get a taste. but B, the thing you have to prepare for is that, okay, if this taste goes well, do I have plans to scale up? If it doesn't go well, do I also have the contingency plans to maybe put it on cruise control and not dump a ton of money into it to try and make it go big? Like Keenan was saying, don't maybe not spend that money on that huge volume if your first 1,000 or 2,000 units is moving slowly, or first 1,000 cases of units, which is often a load in for a province of 1,000 or 2 cases.
Well, and on the flip side, I'd say that there's also people who don't appropriately scale up. They apply for their sales amendment, then they get hit with the amendment, and they're standing there, oh, shoot, I'm supposed to have 60 kilos of flour, I have 20, right? So there's some cases where we've seen underpreparing, but again, it's an industry that, in our eyes, has almost allowed some people to not have to make that investment. There are so many groups out there that have said, I am only going to produce flour, I am only going to co-pack. So for groups who maybe find themselves underwhelmed and don't want to have to go double their capacity and get more money from the board and the investors, there's a lot of groups out there you can go who are doing fantastic jobs in the cannabis space that will save you that time and effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The one on the flower side of things, because I know we're going to probably have a lot of flower folks or micro flower cultivators looking for what's going on here. You probably already heard this, but if you're growing more than 4 strains, you're going to have a real tough time selling that product, because what companies are looking for, what everyone else is looking for, are large lot sizes, or at least the ability to do large lot sizes. So if you're not producing, if you're producing 5 to 8 strains out of your one small micro license, your contingency on how you're going to be able to sell that product shrinks rapidly. If let's say you do 2 strains or 1 or 2 strains, and those crops hit some relatively good levels, but it's 19.5% THC and the terps weren't amazing, fantastic. You can generally convert that all into something that's still fairly saleable. You've still got a story behind it. You're still a micro. If you did that with, like, say 5 to 8 different strains and only 1 or 2 hit, you've broken up your crop in such a big way that it suddenly becomes hard, and all your contingency plans for what you're going to do with everything else make it harder to move through business to B2B spaces or so forth. It's definitely better to understand that convenience and that lot size factor is pretty big out of the gate, and expanding in big chunks that way, as opposed to trying to do 8 or 10 things at once out of the gate and having a number of those not do well and not really being able to do anything with that.
Yeah, I will comment that the average lot size that we transact is 25 to 60 kilos usually, and that's per shipment. So we see some micros that will come and say, I have strain A, I have 5 to 8 kilos, and I'm going to have it every week. I'm like, okay, well, we'll wait for the end of the month when those can be batched, because people forget how many provinces and how many retail stores are out there. So going to market with a case of product, you're going to want to make sure you have enough cases to make that PO worth the time. So absolutely. And also when a buyer comes now and says, I love this batch, trimming quality is fantastic, when's your next one? Being able to answer that and saying July 28th at harvest. That is immense value. That group knows they can count on you. They know that to invest their time into the SKU, it's still going to be there. And we just find a lot of groups who don't plan out their genetics, don't plan out their grow schedules as far, because they want to be reactive, but it's almost too just-in-time inventory handling of the cannabis plant, because people want that, let's say, powdered donut, 29 to 30%. I know it's going to be there every time. So definitely an approach of just knowing yourself or knowing at least the next 4 to 6 months is something I would highlight as help the saleability of products.
Adding to the batch sizes, the bigger batch sizes, the better, because there are a lot of operational costs also you have to consider. All the first of all. And then each batch has to be tested for a particular specification, depending on what kind of specs you choose, whether it's EP or EU or USB. So when you're testing, everyone knows majority of the cost, operational cost for one batch goes to the testing. So you don't want to have too many small batches, because at the end of the day, once you're done, majority of the cost goes to the testing, then there's not much left whether to sell as the amount available for the product itself, and also the cost.
Actually, one question I did have for you, Leif, about because you see a lot of buyers coming in too for product. How far, for flower on specifically, how far in advance are you finding that buyers are really looking on their window? Because I know if you said around like, if you can tell them 3 months ahead where your next crop's coming out, that's great. Like, what is the average buyer who comes to you and says, hey, we need to buy something to fill this lot? How far away are they looking generally?
I'd say on average they're looking at least 2 harvests ahead, so that they can launch it. Let's say they're launching a new SKU, and then knowing that there's a follow-up if it goes well, and then knowing that you have that harvest afterwards that's kind of a flex harvest. So let's say the first one hits, they buy the second one, they're ready to start taking off for 6 to 8 months. I'd say it's about 2 harvests past the one that they're buying on average. They're at least asking about. Doesn't mean they're buying it, but they're at least asking about it. Then the longest we're seeing is 8 to 10 months out. So pre-buying 8 to 10 months. We're hovering just below that year because obviously OCS changing regulations, people's preferences changing super fast. So they're still willing to commit, but year is kind of where people start to get a little hesitant. Kind of on that though, and just keeping going, when we do look at past the flower, monetizing the whole plant, that's something that people don't think of as well. Is you have this trim, you have this shake. There's a lot of they're like, oh, well, it's all small bud that I didn't feel comfortable selling. They kind of forget about solventless extractors, batching 10 harvests of trim and selling it to a processor to distillate. So that's something I think a lot of groups are forgetting about. They're like, well, this trim was a lot of effort, I'm not going to test it. That's fine. Don't have to spend the money to get it COA tested. We can make that a part of the negotiation and deal down the line, but it doesn't mean it can all be set for destruction. Obviously, vault considerations become part of that, but I think that was something being missed by some groups because they're like, bud is the end-all be-all, and yeah, you're not going to get much for the trim, but it might pay your run costs or your labor costs on that bud, right?
Again, batch size, key, really key. That's all I can say to that. As Keenan would know as an extractor as well, it's about batch, and it's about batch size, and that's the only way that the offtake is going to move.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I guess a lot of
like right now.
Sorry, go ahead, Keenan.
Oh no, I'm just gonna echo that. Yeah, like the space is it's consistency, batch sizes. Like everybody wants to know that their supply chain is not going to get disrupted if we put all our eggs in one basket and something goes wrong. It's where's my backup option, or like, are you good enough to, like, these vendor qualifications, you're seeing them more and more, and they're more stringent.
On the extraction side, Keenan, I guess commentary on that is MOQ, so average batch size, but almost MOQ, because a lot of people say, oh, I have this idea in mind, I want to test the market with 60,000 units, but the producer says, sorry, my MOQ is $250,000. So what are groups able to do with that and optimize, let's say, sell-through, but with certain groups' MOQs on the processing product side?
Yeah, so when it comes to kind of those minimum orders on quantity, it's really proving to the processor, the co-backer, of like, you have a buyer on the other end. And so like what we've seen groups do is kind of go get letters of intent from dispensaries and be like, hey, there's a bunch of people here that would be willing to buy, and having those early conversations with the AGLC and the OCS or your sales agency, and be like, hey, what is a realistic number I can pump through? So like, we've seen topical companies come through and being like, we're doing 50,000 units, but the market doesn't support that yet. And so you've got to have alignment with the actual what's moving, and topicals are still a small percent. So maybe it's just a 6,000 bottle run and you're doing 100 cases for AGLC for them to prove to take you in. And then if it goes well, so a lot of companies that we started talking with now is like, hey, you don't have to kind of do everything up front. Like do a feasibility report, get your formulations sorted, work with the co-backer to figure out the batch records and the SOPs and have that all written up. And yeah, you're gonna have to pay for that up front. But then you can sit on that. And then once you have the kind of the sales channel and your brand's good and you've done your skeleton label and you've got it filled out and you're ready to go and present to the board, use whoever sales license you're using to get in there and be like, okay, now I know I need, this Q or this MOU, and then we go from there. But yeah, a lot of guys are coming in being like, yeah, we're doing 100,000 units, and here's your pro forma, and it looks great, and everybody on every stage is making $1 million, and then reality hits, and like there's no market for that yet. So just keep that in mind when you're getting in front of your co-packers. Like, just be realistic. Like, it's, we're seeing it. Be patient. Be realistic. I just echo that all the time.
Also, your co-packers are going to know. Go for it, Anurag. Sorry, pardon me.
Sorry. Also have that conversation with your co-packers right up front, saying whose responsibility is what. Say you're sending your trim over to them, you want to figure out who's going to take on the testing costs or any of those ancillary costs. So have that kind of a open discussion right up front.
Yeah, MOQ is a good one. Your co-packers actually going to kind of know if they've been in the industry for a little while and they've been having these conversations that like with folks like you, they're going to kind of know what stage you're at by the way that you talk to them as well. If you're coming in there saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to do 200,000 units in the first couple of months," they're going to be like, "Great! I hope you've got like $1 billion marketing team behind you. Congratulations, good luck." But realistically, depending on what products you're looking at, again, I think we're talking more about 2 and 3.0 products at this point, but your first load-ins are going to be in the under 10,000 range of units, for sure. So prepare for that, or sorry, I should say, like in the low thousands of cases, and that's your test. If you're certain it's going to do well and you're throwing dollars behind it, great. But know that that's kind of the key. Those have to go well, and then you have to prove that those are going to keep going well to the provinces, and then you get to keep reloading that shot.
Flower cultivators are also kind of able to do that with the new OCS approval process. We have some micros who access to market is through the larger sales license companies, and they just go to them and say, here's my genetic portfolio, here's my COAs I did in the flowering room. That way they can go to the OCS and they're not getting a firm yes or no, but they're kind of getting the OCS's yay or nay on it. So that's what a lot of these groups can do is access, especially with micros having to go through the sales license, not having that road to market. I mean, we do see farm gate coming eventually, but right now it's just go talk to people, be frank about it. Everyone's so guarded about what they're doing. At the end of the day, if you do it well, you're going to be able to sell your product. So I'd say rather than be fearful, aim to go talk to groups, aim to be open with us. Something we've just told micros is, hey, let's set up a 15-minute call bi-weekly and let's keep up on where your harvest is at, and let's just keep all the news. They may not buy it this week, but they know where it's at. They can give the OCS an update. They can tell them, hey, preliminary testing is showing 27% or preliminary testing is showing 24%. So they can just keep that going, because there's nothing worse in the cannabis industry than someone who disappears for 3 weeks to a month. Like, we get it, you're growing the plant, but you just need to be active. Letting the industry and the community know what you're up to is a really good way of putting that from at least my perspective.
I'd say that as well from on the flower side of things specifically, if you're going to be a micro cultivator and you want your brand sold into the market, whether it's under another house or whether it's your product being sold under someone else's brand, the best thing you can do is have someone who is, I want to say, capable and competent of answering questions that people ask you on the internet and not sounding like a corporate robot. Without a doubt. Yeah. It's like you already don't have a huge audience because you don't have the marketing dollars behind you let the big billions of corps do. What you need to do is put a face or a name and a human voice behind your flower, and that's going to help whoever you're selling it to sell it even further by a lot. Doesn't mean you need to be the star of the show. It just literally means you need to be available to answer questions and respond and say sorry and say good things about your product when the time is right. It's not overdoing it's big, but be prepared that is one of the ways that you are going to differentiate yourself in this market, because that's how the people who talk about your product do it. They see someone come up like that and they say, great, look at this person. This person's actually not just a brand. They are the one running this company, or they are the one who talks to the grower every day. Hey, like they get a question on the internet, they're going to go talk to the grower about it. That's awesome. It feels great. That's what sells the product when you're working in small batches. that's what's doing it right now.
Yeah, for sure. I guess what we've talked about a lot now is from the inception of the company to a month after harvest date when the batch release is ready. So what comes next? How do you make that bud stand out? How do you make that tincture stand out? And images, videos, marketing, just getting a sense around what that looks like. How do you make people want your product? We've talked about how you get it to the province, but how do you make it leave the shelves now, right? And at least on the bud side, there's quality images, there's showing different bud sizes in the batch up against a ruler. There's a million different things, but there's a lot of groups that just miss that. They're like, well, I grew something great. It just doesn't stop there. So just want to go around the circle, maybe starting with you and Rugan.
It's not the field of dreams anymore. It's not if you build it, they will come.
Yeah. Everyone's got the best bud. Everyone grew the best bud, right? So it just doesn't stop at that harvest date. So just what can you do to make that product fly off the shelves if it is the best bud out there? And just getting your comments on that. So maybe from your perspective, Ruga, how does that look at the harvest level? Someone takes it off the plant. What can they do to make people realize the value in that bud when they're remote?
I think start with having a open conversation with your employees and also anyone associated with the company itself, because out in the market they're kind of like the faces of your company. So when they know that they can strongly back their product, they have the confidence in their product quality and safety, then they'll be indirectly or directly promoting their product. And what I've been seeing lately, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter, it's having that, like what you guys have already said, that open channel of communication between your consumers and someone in the company, and be able to really answer the questions.
Yeah, no,
Keenan,
that's good.
how about for yourself?
Yeah. I think to differentiate yourself, it's one of the most powerful things is like it's storytelling. It's building your community and around your product and behind your product. And hey, this is my grower, this is my QA. Like people buy and eat that up, and they want to know. Like when you go to dispensaries or even like the stores we sold off, it was like the bud tenders want to know. They want to know who they're buying from, or they're making now. Here's our local section, and here's our diversity, and buy weed from women, and all these movements that are coming up that are cool, and people are getting engaged. It's not the matter of to right when legalization happened, you're walking in, I'm like, what's the highest THC I can get for the lowest price? Give me that, and I'm gone. Now people want to buy for experiences. Like, hey, I got to spend the next 5 hours with my mother-in-law. Can I get something that's I can talk, but I still I can handle it? Like those are your people who are buying for experiences. So if they know you have that kind of product, like you either have that differentiation or build a community behind you and tell your story, because that's what makes a difference now. Like for example, I'll get a new piece of equipment, and like today I put something up on Instagram, like a bunch of DMs, and people are engaging and they're asking questions and like, oh, that's super cool. And it was 8 seconds of our capping line, and like those kind of things people want to see. They want to know the back end of how it's made, essentially.
Behind the scenes scoop.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go for it.
No, I was just saying behind the scenes scoop is what we needed.
Leif, I think this is perfect because this kind of is a good way to tie it all together. The way you can think of it is the market's getting more competitive. Let's pretend you're a chocolate producer producing little chocolates and putting them in a nice box. And I think the common saying in the food industry is chocolate companies don't sell chocolates, they sell nice boxes. If you're the one producing the chocolates, you either need to be the one also understanding what your role is in creating the nice box that's being wrapped up and sold as, or figuring out who your partners are down the line who are going to be good at doing that for you. Real world example, the co-op we're building intends to have its own co-op brands. We're going to be putting out craft flower under our own brand. And so what we're looking for is growers who are able to provide us with really good quality product, but who are also able to speak to it enough. Not a ton, not a little bit, but enough. Same with any 2.0 or 3.0 kind of products. Or if someone wants to launch their own brand, they have to understand how much of that wrapping and box work needs to be done by them. Is it your strength? If it's not, it probably shouldn't be included in your business plan as one of the things you're going to do on day one. It might be something you want to grow into and take over. Is it your strength? Yes, then fantastic. Like then that's the story that you bring into it, and you're going to be looking for a co-packing partner who's able to fill what your needs are, so that you can then supplement your strength on top of that.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just going to say there's some groups who they feel like they can't tell the story though. So we've seen some groups who sell it through a sales channel, someone sells licenses and then runs with their story of it. And I'd say just from day one, getting comfortable knowing, is that a sticking point for you? Do you want a story told about your product, or are you comfortable with someone else telling the story about your product? So that's kind of food for thought that I'd kick to the audience just to think on as well, because once that product leaves your facility on a simple spot buy, you just don't have any ownership over it. So that's where you maybe start exploring JVs or royalty structures, and knowing yourself enough to know what you want out of your product's story as well.
Being realistic about working for it.
Yeah.
Do you have the team built? Do you have the time built? Do you have the capital behind it to do what those steps are, or what are your partners going to do that are their strengths?
Yeah. Keenan, I know something that you're really deep on is obviously the beverage space, the 10 milligram obstacles. So people have gotten their product to the retail stores, and there's still some barriers to be had. So that's something you're more experienced with, and I'll let you kind of riff on that, but just kicking that topic up for discussion as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely when you're talking to guys and girls that have come from the legacy market to the legal market, and that 10 milligram cap it's a hurdle. People are looking at it as like, oh, like, you know, they're experienced cannabis users, and they're like, I would never get high off that. I have to drink or eat 20 of them, kind of thing. And they're kind of also forgetting that there is a market for people that want these 2.5 milligrams, and then there's the ability to kind of, I want to have this as an experience. I want to have multiple in one evening, or especially in the beverage space. So that 10 milligram, it's something that you're going to see. I'm assuming the industry is going to start kind of pushing back on and kind of opening it up, because even the purchase of, there's that limit of 30 grams that you could have, but then, that equates like, 4 beverages, or people are having trouble kind of reconciling that with the calculations with Health Canada. So yeah, the 10 milligram thing, it's a sticking point, but it's something that you got to really brand your product with. Like, am I going to do 10 milligrams off each unit, or am I going to break that up into 3 or 4? How am I going to present this product? Is it something, you just take this one and you're good for the night, or do you want to come back and add this, like a shot of vodka every couple hours or something like that? So really hone in your brand style around that, knowing that, the 10 milligrams is a reality for now, and you're gonna have to play in that field.
Yeah, the things that might change are the way that is packed. If we're lucky, we're going to start being able to pack more than 10 milligrams in a unit. But it's at this stage, especially if you're an edibles producer, for the 10 milligrams, expect that you are going to be ruling out people who only buy edibles for high dose products. They are not your market. They're just not. Yeah. Not today, and not for some time. Learn what your new target is, and if you are selling in the legacy market based on a fairly high THC level, and you're selling to folks that were doing that, expect that to shrink. Expect to start very slow.
Yeah, like you're seeing.
Especially find a way to test your market. Yeah.
Yeah, like we've had stories of like I'm sure we've all done it. Like had those crazy edibles that you can't move after. And then that's like, that's a one specific experience, but you're not doing that every day. And now, my fiance, like, she loves her like 2 milligram gummy that she can eat, and she feels like she's not a big user. And like, but there's so many of her out in the world where it's like, wow, that's a great market, because, Keenan's going to want his one and done, but I'm going to sell 10 to Jane. And it's like, it's that concept of just understanding the market is, as you transition from the legacy to the legal, it's different. It's not the exact same. It's it's mom and dads and people popping in that are professionals that want to eat this at a party as alternative to liquor or something like that. Like it's you're going to see that.
Your use case is significantly smaller. Anecdotally, back when I was running baked edibles, we were doing about 5-10 million a year, and the two most popular products we sold were 400 milligram brownies and 5 milligram gummies sold as a 15 pack. Totally different ends of the spectrum. And when the 10 milligram limit came out, and I built a gummy company that got licensed, I knew we knew what our target had to be, because that wasn't going to be there. Like, this is based. Your pricing has to reflect the utility and value that the customer is getting from this. And then you get to work backwards from there to see if you figure out if it's even a profitable product for you to be making or not, if so it's profitable for someone to be co-packing for you or not, or if you need to figure out how that product's going to get to market in the first steps. One of the things that does not exist in a big way in the market right now, but is growing a big time. And I know we're trying to do it ourselves. Keenan's doing a little bit as well. The co-packing space is growing significantly, and even the potentially like incubation style where you rent space from someone else to try and test your product within their facility. I know at the co-op we're going to be I like to call it the house of broken toys, because we're trying to make some space for anyone who wants to test a product in a certain way. But it's out there. Like it's if you've been waiting to bring a single product to market for a long time, the space is starting to be out there, because we saw a lot of space get created that people can't make use of right now. So if just keep constantly beating the pavement and be ready to put your product into a facility where you go in and take the equipment in and rent a little bit of space and figure out some kind of structure that eventually gets it to market, and then hope that you're able to work backwards and meet those price targets that you want to still provide that value to the customer.
So kind of on that, with this product spectrum, having your own product mix figured out, are you offering a low dosage and a high dosage so both user types can still come to your brand? Just a way to kind of wrap the whole story up is, where are we headed next? What does product innovation mean in the cannabis industry? And that's a big question to tackle, but just want to get everyone's thoughts on that and where they see things progressing towards and why they see them going that way, I guess.
More models like us.
Yeah.
Yeah, regional, smaller, shorter supply chains. I think we have to be evolving towards shorter supply chains, because right now there's 6 or 7 different hands and different types of markups from conception of the product all the way to the market. And what it does is it turns a $3 product into a $12 product at retail. And so it just is not feasible at the moment. And you're seeing companies come out that are really trying to shorten that and put a lot of services under one roof, but also providing it for smaller entrepreneurs or smaller companies or smaller batch sizes. And I think the provinces are starting to catch on that if they want diversity of good product, they're going to have to look at a little bit of smaller batch sizing as well. We're seeing provinces like Alberta already recognizing that, especially on the craft flower side, which we're so proud of. And, BC can't be far behind. Ontario, God knows when, but that's my take on it.
That also helps with the shelf, shorten the shelf life, or especially in case of edibles or drinks or any of these. Reduce the length between the supplier or between the producer and the consumer. That's the best way.
Yeah, and you're seeing that the models, this disruption is starting to happen in terms of like, when we first started, it was a vertically integrated, monster. Like, that's who you're playing with, and nobody was sharing. And now it's like, you have
Get
to
out.
mission. Yeah, now everybody's like, hey, actually, I'm really good at this one specific thing. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to help you tack that on. And then shortening the streams are going to be important.
I'm excited because I see a lot of products that exist in the market today that I don't think are going to exist in a year from now. I think we saw a lot of products get launched just because there was nothing else. But the competition's coming, and I'm so excited because I know that kind of competition is going to be laser focused because it can't afford not to be.
I'm not saying let someone else do it for you, but partner. For example, someone can come to us and say, hey, I want to do a gummy line. Okay, well, here's 5 options. Here's the difference between the 5 options and what's the best fit for you. It doesn't mean you have to run with one gummy provider. It doesn't mean you have to go do it yourself. There's just so many talented and specialized groups out there who are chomping at the bit. So that would be my kind of last remark on product innovation is whatever that product is, there's groups out there that it would be whether this we're even seeing a lot of food labs or universities get dragged in because they have the kitchen space and these students who want to go spend all day finding the perfectly balanced drink format. So that's another way that groups can explore is just bringing the specialization elsewhere. So that would be my commentary on that. I'm not sure if you guys had any more comments on overall market trends or where you hope the industry will get to. Obviously, Brandon's alluded to some of his wants, but just wanted to get everyone's sense on overall macro trend that you guys had to cap it off.
Yeah, I think one thing we're definitely noticing, and from like, sitting on boards with other companies and some of my other experience in the space, it's the transparency of pricing. Like when we first started doing deals back in the day, or when I was sitting on different boards working with like some of the larger LPs, they were complicated. Like everybody was scared to make a move and wanted to hedge this bet and hedge that bet. So it was like, here's a complicated royalty structure, or here's 30 different lines in the Schedule A of how we're going to price everything. And it's good to have that transparency for sure. And like, that's important. Like make sure you guys don't, forget about who's paying for testing and things like that. But now I think as the market's maturing, you're going to see like, hey, if you want this unit made, it's $4 and that's it. And we will, we'll package and do things like that. So it was interesting as we evolved our company and we were, trying to, this is the distillate cost and this is the, XYZ. And then that was just bringing this added level of complication where I'm thinking and I'm seeing the industry already really start to be dialed in, and people know what their costs are now. People know that I need a kilo of X for this price. So when you buy it, I'm going to roll that in, and I know the jars cost this and the label production costs this and our exercise tickets this. So you're going to start seeing a lot more flexibility and transparency and like standardization of prices, which I think is going to drive up competition and drive up the innovation, where you're going to see some pretty cool products come on the market.
Not sure what your commentary is on that, Brandon, but I'd point people towards just understanding where the market's at. It's changing month over month. When we started this, distillate costs were $18,000 a kilo. They're moving $4,000 to $7,000 a kilo, depending on your specs now. So keep an eye on the market.
Yeah.
Don't lock into something just because it's there. Things are changing. So I just say keep your pulse on it. You need to be active on that. And that's without plugging it too much, but that's why we issue our month-end report. Our members just like seeing that trend and like understanding where the market's headed because it just changes so rapidly. So that's something I'll point consumers to as well, is reach out. We have the market data trended over the last 14 months on a very regular basis that we can provide as well to all of our members. So just something is finding all that data.
One thing I kind of would, recognize this. If you are coming into the market as basically regardless of what product you're producing, and you're expecting to be a smaller producer or with a unique product or something that hasn't quite been seen before or something that you're going to do but do it a little bit better or a little bit differently, don't expect to be the low cost producer. Just don't. I talked to so many people out there, especially in 2018, 2019, through 2020 for Dynalio, our gummy factory, who came and said, yeah, like we have all these things we want to do, and then we also want it to be in like the low to mid value range pricing. Like, so you don't own any of the infrastructure, you barely own the IP. Food products are basically a dime a dozen, and anyone can and like your idea is fantastic, but getting someone to replicate it, not hard. You're going to be responsible for the branding. You're responsible for all these things, and you still think you're going to make a good enough margin to do this while competing against companies that are now doing this for basically pennies on the dollar for margin. Don't expect that in your business plan. Like, honestly, if this is a product that you're launching for the first time, or for that it's new to you, you don't have any of that stuff in place, expect to come in a middle to high kind of price range and figure out how to try and establish some sales and compete in that range. Because if you don't own that front end and you're telling all of these people that are in your supply chain with you, hey, we got to squeeze this down because this product's going to be it's got to be a low cost competitor if we want to sell a lot of it, they're all going to look at you and be like, yeah, take a hike. Like you're in the wrong game here. Like it's not going to work for any of us here. Like you're trying to squeeze blood from a stone. We're all stones. And that's like that's kind of the way I've seen it is in the last several years. We're all a bunch of stones and we don't want to squeeze each other. We just have to understand how we play together in the chain.
Anruga, any comments on where you see things headed, or trends, or observation for the audience?
Nothing new that hasn't already been said. I would echo on that in the 2.0s and 3.0s, there is still a lot more room to play with, and I'm excited to see what other innovative products come out.
Well, thanks for joining, everyone. I know that there is supposed to be a brief Q&A after this, but obviously all of us are working nonstop, so feel free to contact Keenan and Brandon or myself if you have any questions about anything in the industry. We've obviously heard from the beverage and processing side with Keenan, the QA and consultancy side with Nruga, and Brandon on the edible and legacy experience, and happy to talk on the CCX side and also connect you with the LPs who know everything on the specialized areas as well. So sure, all of our information will be readily available. LinkedIn, Google search, you can find us all and reach out anytime. But let's go around the room briefly and have everyone sign off with the best way to reach them and their comments to the audience.
If you're a grower or someone who wants to bring products to market or someone who wants to buy and bring unique products to market and be a brand, contact us. We would love to talk to you. We are looking to buy good flower, we're looking to buy good concentrates and bring them to market and other products. We're looking to facilitate and incubate companies who are also looking to do the same and provide those services for someone else. Please reach out. We'd love to talk to you. There's lots of room for you in this market and we want to put you there.
If you have any questions regarding QA or regulatory compliance or just anything related to quality, reach out to me. I'll leave my information in the comment section or LinkedIn. I'm active on LinkedIn. You can just search me on LinkedIn and you can find me there.
Yeah, and then to close it out, like same thing with Token Naturals and same with Brandon, like bring products to market, engaging with the community. It's definitely kind of our bread and butter, and in the manufacturing space especially. So if you guys do have questions, comments, just want to grab a virtual coffee, like our team's here to do that. And beyond Token, like the industry's friendly. Like it's not a big scary. There's the big massive public companies, but for the most part, like you can pick up the phone and you can hit somebody up or bug somebody on LinkedIn. Like it's go and ask for help. It's out there. Like that's how we got our company to the spot we have. It wasn't by ourselves. It was learning from the people who've paved the path before you, and reaching back and helping the next person. So keep that in mind as you continue your journey, and good luck.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for the time.
Congrats again, Keenan, on the license.
Yeah, thanks guys. We'll have to go have a little celebratory drink. If you're in Edmonton, I'm in Edmonton too, so we should link up.
Oh yeah, that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Awesome. I might send you a note, Brandon. I'd love to get you guys added to the mailing list for the month-end report as well, and hear a little bit more about what you're up to.
That sounds great. I'd love to. And thanks again, everyone. This has been a real pleasure.